All right. And so we're going. So first of all, thanks to all of you for being here today for this webinar. I'm so thrilled to have these alumni from 2009 on this virtual meetup. These were my first group of seniors ever. So I started at Elon in 2008 in the School of Comm. So Craig and Olivia and Connor were my first batch of seniors. So I've known them a long time, and it's so great to have them back. But first, let me go ahead and introduce everyone. And Olivia, I'll start with you. Olivia Allen-Price is the editor and host of AQED Public Media's Bay Curious podcast, a weekly show that answers listener questions about the Bay Area. She first created Bay Curious as a radio series in 2014, launched the podcast in 2016, and grew the show to be KQED's most popular podcast native property. Olivia also launched a monthly Bay Curious newsletter and web video series to answer additional listener questions. Craig Campbell is a senior producer hailing from North Carolina, and is now based in New York City. He graduated from Elon with a BA in communications in 2009. After starting his career creating promotional and instructional content for an outdoor adventure company in Colorado, Craig landed a job as a video journalist for WBTV News in Charlotte. In 2011, Craig joined Music Choice, where he produces, directs, and edits artist press interviews, custom artist documentaries, live performances, and brand campaigns. And then Conor Brittain, who might be on here now, go ahead and introduce him. He also, as you know, graduated in 2009, and he was a part of the first iMedia class. So he's in the inaugural Interactive Media Masters Program cohort. And after completing the program, he moved to California, where he took his first job as a designer at Red Interactive, a digital ad company. In 2018, Conor joined his current company, Left Field Labs, as a front-end developer, and he currently lives in Los Angeles. So that's everybody. And let's go ahead and start. So I've prepared a few questions that I'm going to ask our panel. And then what I'm going to do is open it up for all the attendees to ask questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So it's going to last about 45 minutes. But what I want to do is I talked about this a little bit earlier, but let's go back in time to 2009. The big recession has hit. The news is everywhere. People are drowning in the bad news, and you're a senior and you're looking for a job. Tell me what you were feeling and thinking at that point, and what was your strategy to land that first gig and start your career? Craig, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I've been trying to think a lot about this. I remember thinking a lot about how much I was going to hate having to write resumes and cover letters. So I think I came to you a lot about that. Does this sound good? Is this the right thing to do? I don't know. But to be fair, I actually got a job fairly easily that winter before I graduated, through connections and through friends. So I wasn't stressing. So I think that my real job hunt started when that job ended, which was only a short-term job. It was like maybe 5 months long. So I was kind of worried, but I was definitely a little bit more present, I think, in the senior end of like college moments than maybe some of my classmates were in terms of their job hunts. So I kind of was like briefly set for a little bit.
Okay, good, thanks. What about you, Olivia?
That sounds amazing, Craig, because that is not, unfortunately, the level of chill that I had at any point in my college career. I was definitely focused a little too much on school, perhaps, and I didn't have enough fun in college. That's a sidebar. But I think I was definitely stressed. I mean, just, you even hear from the beginning of as being a comm student that it's going to be kind of hard. You're going to have to stand out in the industry to get a job. So you kind of are, I feel like, primed from the beginning that this is like, it's not a field that you can just kind of waltz into. There's not 1,000 jobs, in every market. So I kind of, from the very beginning of my time at Elon, knew that getting a job was always going to be a little hard. I specifically really wanted to work in newspapers, which, also were even more challenged than other media fields. So I think, I was definitely stressed. I definitely took the approach of I'm going to blast my resume and cover letter everywhere. I think I applied for something like 40 or 50 jobs over the course of maybe 6 weeks or so in the spring. And it really ran the gamut. I mean, I was applying for like a pretty wide variety of jobs. I learned pretty quickly that what I kind of really wanted to do, which was like be a newspaper reporter, I wasn't seeing a lot of jobs for, but I was seeing a lot of jobs for online producers, which, work with journalists in the newsroom. But it's definitely more of like a techie skill set, which I kind of had some of the elements of that. So I found myself applying and kind of reframing a lot of my cover letter and my resume to actually match what was available kind of in the market at the time. And my first job ended up being an online producer job. So we'll probably get to that later, but that's kind of like how things went for me. I will say I kind of came up with a system to make applying for all those jobs a little bit easier. Which I would recommend, you kind of figure out what works for you. I had like a file structure with, the name of the job was the file name. And then inside each one, I had like the cover letter and the resume that I sent to that job. And so if I found a job that was similar, I had like a resume and a cover letter that I had customized for, a different job that I could then kind of just tweak a little bit. Because I was tweaking my resume and cover letter for each job.
Okay, great. And Connor, you took a little bit of a different approach. So you graduated undergrad in 2009, and then you went into the first iMedia program cohort. So can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to do that and what your job search was like, during and after iMedia?
For sure. So for me, the iMedia program was an opportunity to explore a lot of different skills that I had acquired as an undergrad and felt like a very unique way to apply them, which was very appealing considering the job market at the time. And it was just it felt like a good way to distinguish myself. Uh-oh, did I drop?
No, you're still there.
Okay, great. So with that, the program kind of introduced me to a lot of opportunities that I didn't even know existed. So when I was looking for a job in the spring of before graduation from the master's program, it was a little overwhelming just because I was still trying to figure out what jobs there were to have and where I kind of lined up what seemed like a fit. So Ross gave me the best advice I've ever had from a career standpoint, which is to really put yourself out there and find companies that are doing the sort of work that you are interested in or is inspiring to you, and try and find someone at that company, whether it's an HR or recruitment, who will just give you their ear for like 15 minutes so you can ask them about what sort of background do your various employees have, and what skill set do you look for in X, Y, and Z? And in doing so, I learned a ton about what jobs there were out there, but I was also making inroads with companies that I had no connection to prior. So what that really did for me was just kind of give me some momentum in the workforce, gave me some connections, gave me some confidence in knowing what skills I could kind of tailor my resume to for the next couple months of school. And then, it just kind of went from there. And so for me, I ended up making a connection at my first company. And by the time I was graduating, a couple months before graduating, they told me that they, had a junior level job opening. And so I just went with it. And it worked out. But yeah, for me, it was very much, a kind of a top-down approach. Okay, let's filter through all of the potential jobs and figure out what I can do. I mean, I'm actually really curious to ask Olivia because she casts such a wide net. And I think that takes a lot of confidence because for me, I was like, I don't know if I can apply for something I'm not qualified for. So I think that, I don't know, I found that very interesting to hear from Olivia, how she just kind of put herself out there and you know how she managed that. For me, it sounds like a lot of work. So, but yeah, so that was my approach, and yeah, and so that kind of worked out for me.
Yeah, thanks. And I remember working with you on your portfolio, and I remember I was so impressed because you had done so much research on different agencies, and you kind of picked what you liked best about those websites, and then incorporated that into your first portfolio. And I just thought it looked really, really good, and I think that was a big part of what impressed employers.
Oh, thanks, Ross. Yeah, I mean, again, for me, I'm very much, you know, if I can see it, I can achieve it, sort of thing. You know, it's harder for me to abstractly go after something if I'm not able to like kind of break down what goes into that job or what went into that project. So that just was kind of a great, you know, approach for me, and just the way I think. So.
And so you've talked about this a little bit, Connor, and a little bit, Olivia, but just kind of overall, as you think about what was most successful that you did during this time to help you land a job, what was that? Was that the, you know, casting out a bunch of resumes, or was it the person-to-person networking piece?
Yeah, I can share mine. So ultimately, I think it was like two things. One is I put a lot of energy and time into building my personal portfolio website. So like it looked real cool, you know, like it looked really nice. It was, I feel like, a little bit better than my peers, like hopefully helped me to stand out among other, you know, people who I'd be competing with for these jobs. Because that's, you know, as a college graduate, that's kind of like mostly what they have to look at you for, is like what your portfolio you've made available online. So really, like, I would recommend putting energy into like getting all your best work there. You know, classwork is totally fine. Internship work, of course. Personal projects, like people totally, I think, undervalue personal projects. Even if you're like an artist and you like watercolor in your spare time, like put some up. Like things like that show people how much breadth that you can bring to these media jobs, because a lot of people are looking for people who have a lot of skills and jacks of all trades. And if, you know, if, oh, someone also has like artistic ability, that might be handy. So I think that was one thing that helped me. And then the other was actually using LinkedIn. One thing that everyone always tells you, I feel like, when you're applying for jobs is like, oh, like use your network, use your network. And that made me so frustrated when I was a senior, because I felt like I don't really have a network. Like my parents don't work in this field. We don't have any family friends who work in this field. You know, I've talked to the people who I had internships with. None of them are hiring. Like, what network are you talking about? And ultimately, what ended up working with LinkedIn was I found this job that I was super excited about. It felt like an attainable job, and but it was exciting to me. It might not have been the dream job, but it was attainable. And I went to the staff page of the company. It was the Virginian Pilot as a newspaper. Went to the staff page and just started at the very top with the editor, and went on LinkedIn and typed in his name. Sorry if you're hearing my Slack notifications. Typed in his name and just went to see if I have any connections. And lo and behold, I had like a third connection through Elon. Actually, a professor of mine, Harlem Jacobson, was connected to a former student who had graduated Elon like 10 years before I did, who I never knew. And she was actually serving as the administrative assistant to the editor-in-chief of the newspaper. So I sent an email to Harlan saying like, hey, I see you know this person. Can you connect me? He connected me to her. She talked to me on the phone for 15 minutes, gave me some advice on like what to put in my cover letter, what kind of things they were looking for. Once she got to know me, you know, I think I never asked her to do this, but she did like put in a good word. I think you want to be careful with like being too pushy around that, but she thankfully did that for me. And so it helped me get the interview, and I was ultimately able to land the job. So, you know, that was a network that I didn't even know that I had. So anytime like someone really wants a job who I'm, you know, mentoring in some way, I always recommend like go to LinkedIn, go to the staff page, just see if there's any kind of like connection that you have, because you never know, like that could be the connection you need.
You know, I remember being really stressed out by LinkedIn 10 years ago. I think it's like a totally different platform now. I was a lot just using Facebook at the time. And probably now, if it was me 10 years ago, I'd probably be connecting a lot on Instagram, just because that is where you find people, that is where you see a lot of produced content. And I guess at the time that was sort of Facebook, and I would just message friends about what their jobs were like and where they were working, just to kind of get a good idea of maybe what were some ground level positions, like Connor had mentioned, that I wasn't really thinking about, which is how I found the promotional gig out in Colorado, shooting promo videos for a rafting company, because I didn't think about that stuff. Like I wasn't in the marketing, classes really very much. I thought that I'd want to do news. I realized through being at Elon and being involved in the news program that I didn't think news was going to be a career for me. So then I was kind of lost, but I had all these skills of shooting and editing and stuff like that. So I was trying to figure out a new way to apply that. So a lot of, for me, it was just the networking through Facebook, not LinkedIn. Although LinkedIn now, I would say, is much simpler to network and less overwhelming.
Yeah, I'll jump off of that for sure. I mean, again, Ross was really huge for me in helping me feel comfortable with LinkedIn, and not just like learning all of the features of it, which are powerful and Ross knows a ton of, but like etiquette and kind of like Olivia was saying, like how do you strike that balance between, not being too pushy, but also showing an interest and motivation and all that. So I leaned heavily on Ross and being like, can you, just proofread this message before I send it to this HR person over at this company? And that gave me a lot of confidence. But yeah, it's a really powerful tool. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but that was what I used to connect to various companies I ended up, having a conversation with. So, that definitely was a big help for me. And yeah, I highly recommend using it. But, again, I think a major key to using it is just, trying to stand out to the people you're trying to reach out to by being yourself, but, polite, but also yourself. And again, Olivia said something about, in her portfolio, just showing, what makes you unique and your interests. Jay Anderson, Elon professor, used to say, you are a brand. And so when I was going out into the workforce and trying to put together my portfolio, I just kept thinking about that over and over and over again. Like, how can I set myself apart? And not in a way, everyone, is going to have work to show, but how can I make myself memorable outside of that? And so for me, the portfolio was a big opportunity to do that. And yeah, and again, just finding opportunities to talk to people on the phone is, I think, the biggest thing you can do, because you're talking to a person, you're making a connection, you're giving yourself an opportunity to let your personality be seen and heard. So yeah, can't recommend enough the LinkedIn approach.
Yeah, great. And it's really interesting that Connor, you and Olivia both used LinkedIn, but took kind of different approaches. So Connor did kind of like I call the company crush style. It's like, I like these companies, so I'm going to hone in on these and find people there. But then Olivia was like, let me see what jobs are out there that look good, and then I'll see if I know someone there or know someone that knows someone there. And so those are two different strategies, but obviously both can be very successful. And Craig, to your point, I talk with students all the time, especially those that are interested in social. They only find out about opportunities through Instagram or Twitter. They aren't posted elsewhere. So it's really important to be on those other platforms as well. And another thing that I was kind of hearing in some of this, and I've just had so many discussions with seniors over the past couple of months, is most of them are like, I'm not really sure what I want to do. And that's overwhelming. So I don't know where to start or where to look. And I was wondering if y'all could speak to that. And Craig, you did a little bit saying, I was just kind of on Facebook seeing what was out there and what that was, and I was open. And I just think that's on a lot of my seniors' minds right now. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, like I was saying, I had thought that I had gotten into communications because I thought that I wanted to work in broadcast news. And I learned probably through a couple years there that I just wasn't loving news like I thought I was going to love news. Um, and I should note that Anchorman had come out probably right before I started college. So I think there was probably a massive influence in that for me. But so that was a huge mental block for me, I think, my senior year in terms of really getting started into the job hunt. Having found the job that I'd found, knowing even that it was like temporary, I just like couldn't motivate myself necessarily to like get going because I couldn't figure it out. But by the time I was kind of like midsummer and I was in the middle of the job, I knew I needed to start looking for something else. So what I did was I just thought about the skills that I had, the things that I knew how to do. And from college, from being at Elon, and plus I took a lot of advantage of a lot of the programs that Elon had to offer, which I hope a lot of you were able to do as well. I got to go abroad with not directly with Jana, but with one of Jana's programs. I studied media in Costa Rica. I was involved in the Elon Phoenix News. So I was doing a lot. And so I had kind of collected a lot of different things that didn't necessarily speak to one thing. So I started just finding places in Charlotte and just applying to advertising agencies, news places, anything that needed someone who knew how to edit and write, or someone who knew how to use a camera and edit something, or someone who could maybe use a camera or could maybe write. So I was just like kind of just thinking about the things that I enjoyed doing and looking for jobs that had some element of that in there. But I also was done being, I think I realized that I needed to be try to be like less picky. I think I was just like, give me a job. Give me anything where I might be able to have gain some sort of learning experience that might open up a different pathway to me that I hadn't known about or thought about before, that might guide me into what ultimately my career might look like. So I was just kind of ultimately just finding random TV camera jobs and applying for them where I could. So yeah, but the not knowing what to do definitely was a block for me. And I think maybe just don't worry about that would be my advice in that sense. I think just think about the skills that you've earned, in college, and the things that you have to show for those skills, and look for jobs where those skills apply, try them out. The act of working in and of itself, in my opinion, is a good resume addition. So I just think like, be less concerned about knowing exactly what you want to do and just be more concerned about continuing to learn once you graduate, I guess was the perspective that I ultimately took, because it took me a long time to find a job that I was like super passionate about.
Right. It's just your first job, not your forever job.
Exactly.
Connor or Olivia?
Yeah, I just want to, I mean, you basically said it, like, it's your first job, not your forever job. Don't put too much stress on yourself that this needs to be the perfect job or this is what you're going to be doing forever. Because I feel like of all of the people that I graduated with, most of us moved out of our first jobs within a year, 2 years, maybe 3. There was actually like a joke. One of my college roommates was like changing her job every year for like 6 or 7 years. And we were like, wow, it's been 18 months, Megan, like, way to go. But she just kept having opportunities to like move up and move up and move up, and she took them. So yeah, I wouldn't overstress if it's, either not the job that you imagined, or if it's, you don't know what your dream job is. You don't know what, the ideal is. I think just starting anywhere is going to give you the experience to like figure out what the next step is that will ultimately lead you to, a place where you're going to be like really happy. Hopefully that's the goal, right? One just fun anecdote, when I put this, I put a thing up on Facebook, just asking other graduates from these years kind of what advice they have and sort of what their experiences were like. And one that kind of made me laugh was a woman who said that she got her first job was working at a cemetery, which had nothing to do with what she went to high school or college for. And it was literally just like a job to pay the bills. But she says she looks back and she's like so thankful for that job, because even though what she's doing now has almost nothing to do with it, it would seem, she says she learned a lot, and it's still like she still looks back and has all these amazing memories and these stories from this kind of wacky first job. So don't overthink it. Like, even if it's not what you planned, like, it works out. Like, if you just talk to anyone who's been out of school for 10 years, I think most of us will tell you, like, we got to where we did. We all took different paths there. Every path looks unique, but it will work out as long as you keep like seeking happiness, whatever that means for you.
Yeah, I think there's something true to the idea that nothing shows you what you want to do than doing something you don't want to do. That really, so I think getting into the workforce and trying something out is, the most valuable thing you can do. And just getting started is just, again, finding something that puts your skills to the test. And if not, it'll help, just think about, okay, what skills aren't I using, and why is that making me unhappy, or what could make me happier? I will say my experience was kind of the opposite. I ended up getting my first job and I stuck with them for like 7 years, which is like way past the expiration date, especially in the digital world. So I definitely think it was a bit of a unique case, but part of that was I joined the company that I did as a designer, and after a couple of years realized, hey, design isn't, I like it, but it's not what I'd rather be doing. And I realized that programming was kind of where I wanted to be. And so I just, my company was kind enough to let me kind of transition into a developer role, and so that kind of extended my timeline there. But having that sort of rapport with my company for those first 2 years, like, I think kind of helped me to convince them that, yeah, I'm, worth keeping around, and I can be valuable in this field, in this area as well. So I do think that, you don't have to have it all figured out going into it. It's just, if for me, what was helpful is even though I had an idea of where I wanted to start, just to kind of, again, like make sense of what I was looking at in the job market, I just kind of found companies that were doing things that excited me and were really quality work. And it's a little different, obviously, for whatever industry you're going into, but for digital creative, there are tons of awards sites that feature work every single day. And so what I would do is I'd go to those sites and just kind of like find the projects that were being featured that really spoke to me, and then I kind of reverse engineered, okay, what company made this, plug it into LinkedIn, is there anyone who I can message who works there? And just, again, so it was just kind of like finding a place that excites you, even if you don't know how you fit in at that company. I think that's just as valid a place to start. So if that helps narrow down your, what you're looking for, that might be helpful.
Thanks, Connor. We've got a question from one of our attendees, from Rachel, and she is very thankful that you're here today. And she wants to know, besides connecting with people, how else did you use LinkedIn to make yourself more impressive? And they might not have even had these back then, but did you take advantage of the LinkedIn skills quizzes, or did you post a lot of content on your LinkedIn timeline?
You're making us sound so old.
They didn't have quizzes back then.
Yeah, I don't think they did have quizzes back then, so you're totally right. Yeah, they didn't have quizzes, and I think even posting to timeline wasn't really a thing people did back then.
Facebooky.
2009, ancient times, really. But I will say, I used the LinkedIn resources that were available at the time, like maybe beyond sort of the basic. So, messaging people I wanted to connect with, just making sure I filled out all of the fields that they gave us, an opportunity to fill out, making sure that my what's the part at the top where you can like kind of write whatever you want. Making sure that was like really compelling and strong and used like strong, confident language. So that's like maybe a piece that you might run by, a friend or Ross or like a resource, somebody who can like make sure that your language there, conveys that you are like competent and strong and like they should be excited to work with you. Picking up, I think the thing back then was like you could get people to like vouch that you had certain skills. So I remember, I don't know if that's still a thing. Is that still a thing?
Oh yeah, it's still a thing.
Okay. I remember like asking, former people I had interned with to like endorse me or like write little things about different skills. So yeah, I definitely used like a lot of the tools that we had back then. They're not the same as they are now, but I think LinkedIn is like an amazing resource for finding a job. So I would, use whatever feels like it like might work for you. And maybe Ross, you might have some thoughts on these things.
No, I mean, all that's really great. I do think that participating and being a part of the culture of LinkedIn is important. So establishing some type of routine, if it's just maybe twice a week, in between classes, just pop on, like a couple of things, post some things. And it's amazing the benefits that can come from that. Like, there's a smaller PR firm in Raleigh that got this really great new client earlier this week, and I sent someone that, and of course I saw it on LinkedIn, and so I sent my contact there an email. I was like, congrats, that's awesome. And she was like, oh, we're going to be needing interns. And I was like, yes. And so that's how it works. Like if you're participating and supportive and adding, then people are going to appreciate that and then share good things with you back. All right, we got another question here. What do you do when agencies you applied to and the ones you've been keeping your eye on are not hiring? Do you wait until they have more business, or should you just find a job? And which jobs or roles in communications industry are hiring right now that you might recommend looking for? There's a lot in that question.
Yeah, I think what I'll say to the first part is just that, I think viewing your connections as like a garden to cultivate is, the best way to look at it. You might not be yielding the ripest tomatoes right now. You might not be hiring, but if you check in with that person every few months and just say, hey, I noticed, your work was featured on this website again. I just wanted to pop in and see how things were going over there. A lot of times you just never know what sort of gold you'll uncover, because a lot of times I think these agencies, especially when they're hiring, it's just all of a sudden they need someone immediately, and who's ever in their like immediate purview suddenly becomes, especially if they have some sort of rapport with you, suddenly you're going to shoot to the top of the list. That's just kind of how it worked out in my experience, at least. So I think, yeah, if you make a connection and you have that 15-minute informational interview, it doesn't end there. If they're not hiring, that's got to be something you're water those plants every couple of weeks or months, or whatever it is, where you're not feeling pushy or whatever. But that, yeah, I think that's kind of the way I would look at those connections.
Yeah, I would also say, like he said, the beauty of social media is you can continue to engage. So you can reach out, you can have conversations with those advertising agencies, try to have a schedule of informationals with them if you want, just to engage with them, but then follow them on Instagram or Facebook, comment on things that they like, continue to engage and try to maintain conversation with them, and continue to check in on their job, so that if you do see something open up that you might be interested in, you already kind of have a closer connection to making an interview for that job happen. This wasn't for me, but one of my classmates, I remember, was super into a particular brand. It's a camera bag brand, loved it, reached out for them about jobs. They didn't have anything, continued to follow them on Instagram, would share some stuff occasionally when she saw something she loved, was taking pictures with an item from that brand, her own, and occasionally posting stuff. And they ultimately hired her, and she's still there at that job. So it's almost like she pretty much forced them to eventually bring them on as soon as they had a position open up. So if there's something you're really passionate about, a place that you're really passionate about being a part of, just like continue to make yourself a part of that, even if you're not working there.
Thank you. We got some more questions popping up here. And well, and Craig, one thing that you said, which struck me, it's obvious, but I feel like it's something that I should, highlight, especially on LinkedIn, is that it's social media. So you have to be social and you have to engage, and that's how it works. I talked to some
weird. Like, you're not being weird either. It's social media. Like, you can ask them for things. You can comment on pictures and say that they're cool, or whatever. It's social media, so you don't have to be embarrassed about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. All right. I have a question about what makes a portfolio good and compelling. What needs to be in a good portfolio?
I have just a thought I'll throw in. One thing I would recommend is once you, this is maybe a little bit ahead of what you're asking about, but once you put the portfolio page together, send it to someone and then go watch them as they open that link for the first time and interact with it, and just make sure they don't get like confused or lost or click on something that takes them to a dead end. Because when I'm looking at portfolios, if there's just like something sloppy like that, it's like an immediate turn off, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I'm just like, oh, like, you can't even link this properly. That's not a good sign. Or your portfolio doesn't work on my phone, and everything happens on the phone now. So I would just make sure you like watch somebody go through it, because you can learn a lot from that, like just from the user experience perspective. Beyond that, I don't know, Connor probably has some good thoughts on this. So I'll turn it over to him.
Well, for me, when I was approaching it, at the time I was creating my portfolio, I knew more precisely what sort of job I was going after. So I tried to make it, technically impressive, have like, animations, things like that. But, that was just because that was the job I was going after. I think from a broad level, I think Olivia hit the nail on the head. I think having a portfolio that proves that you're thinking about the person who's going to be using it shows so much about who you are and what sort of approach you take to your work. I think, no matter what you're going after, employers are going to be looking at you, seeing not just if your skills are a fit, but if your personality is a fit. And if they can see, okay, this person clearly is thinking about things beyond, just, I need to get things in a portfolio to showcase my skills. If you can, convey that sense of like thoughtfulness and just, adaptability and forward thinking, I think those are the sorts of places that your portfolio can become more than just a showcase of work. And on top of that, again, any chance you have to, insert your personal interests or personal style, flair, what have you, I think that's what's going to make your portfolio stand out beyond the work. The work, I think most employers, they'll see the work and they'll know really quickly, like, okay, this is work that, shows the skills that we're looking for or not. It's not going to take them that long to know that. I think what most, at least for me, what the most of the time that I'm spending on portfolio is trying to get a sense, who is this candidate, and what approach do they bring to their work. So whatever you convey in that sense beyond just this is what I did, I think can really make your portfolio shine.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to skip down one question because I think it relates to a lot of what some of you had been saying, and then also a lot of what students are hearing right now is like, reach out to alumni, talk to alumni, and then stay connected. And students think, okay, but how do I do that and not be offensive or weird or creepy? So what is, if a student were to approach you to make a connection, what would the best way for them to do that? Like, what would the email be like, and then what would the conversation be like?
I think just, a show of just understanding of the other person's time, and just recognizing that you're coming from a place of trying to learn and gather, learn from the person you're talking to. I think just it's just, I don't know, just a sense of humility is all I look for. If it feels like impersonal or just like, I'm doing this because you're doing what I want to do or you're at a company I want to do, and then you just feel like you're being used to, as a means to an end. It really is. I'm excited to talk to candidates when it feels like, okay, this person is ready to have a conversation and, open up a little bit and just is eager to learn. That's, I guess, yeah. So like just a sense of, humility and just, yeah, hey, look, I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And, if there's anything, and what's also nice, just a follow up afterwards too, just saying, hey, really appreciate that time. And, even just kind of reiterating a couple of takeaways from the conversation that really meant a lot to you shows that, hey, you were actively listening and that wasn't a waste of my time to talk to you. It was clearly a benefit to have had that conversation. So yeah, those are things I kind of look for.
Thank you.
Never send a LinkedIn connection without any sort of, why am I connecting to you? Because that it's just hard to know what, if you've never seen a name before, you don't think twice about it. It just goes unremembered. So
I have a couple thoughts on this. One is I would actually, when you're looking at who to reach out to, I do think that people who more recently graduated are probably going to be the best people to reach out to for a couple reasons. They're probably still like the most emotionally connected to like where you are in your life. And they're also probably in starter enough jobs that they have bandwidth to talk to you for an hour or something like that. One thing that I'll say, I get actually a fair amount of requests from students. Actually, not really as many from Elon. We've got a number of journalism schools in the Bay Area. So because I work at a media organization in the Bay Area, I just get probably 50 requests or something a year from students. So things that I look for, the ones I tend to respond to, are I want to know I like when people ask me specifically in the email what they want to get from me. Tell me specifically what we're going to be talking about. Just wanting to chat with me about what I do is just a really vague premise, and it's hard to get excited about having that conversation because I've had it 50 times already. So if you're asking specific questions about my work, I'm definitely more likely to respond. I think also for me, setting a time limit on it is really helpful, just because you are trying to fit a lot in your day. And this is something that, you're kind of, it's sort of volunteer work. You're not getting paid for it. Your boss doesn't see it. You're doing it out of your love for helping somebody else. So it's helpful to know oh, well, we're going to talk for 15 or 20 minutes. And then really start the conversation by saying, I know we're going to talk for 20 minutes and I'm going to hold us to that. And when it gets close to the time, you should be the one to help initiate getting off the phone, because it might be hard for the person you're speaking with to want to kick you off the phone, but they would appreciate it if you probably kept to the time frame that you set. I think that's all. But yeah, being really specific, setting a time limit for what you're asking.
Thank you.
Those are awesome suggestions, I would say, Olivia. Now I would say too, for me, sometimes I'm super busy as well. We mentioned bandwidth, and I would be less afraid about sending a follow-up email than you might think. You might think that you're being more annoying than you are, but in reality, I saw the email, somebody called me over to their desk, I forgot about the email, I never saw it again. And so sending another email a few days later, a week later, that's just hey, I just wanted to follow up on this, is totally fine. And I think, if you're trying to stay connected with that person, sending an occasional hey, I just wanted to reach out and just say, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to let you know I started working on this and I got this job and blah, blah, blah. I don't think any of that's weird. It's email, and it's really easy for the recipients to read that, appreciate it, and set it aside. So I think just try to remember that, again, it's all this social media stuff. I know that in some ways it feels awkward, but in other ways, if we've connected with you, then it's chill to stay connected to a degree and to a level. But like Conor said, and Olivia said, we are busy and we do, we do want to help a lot, but we also need to have objectives and points and to keep moving on. And, so I think just respecting all of that while also just not being afraid is important.
Thank you.
And just one last note, if you're ever questioning, hey, am I being too pushy, or does this sound pushy, just have a friend read your message. Like, I think just having some third party read it is going to immediately tell you, no, this is fine, or oh yeah, maybe I should work this differently. So
Okay, great. And so final question, because I want to be respectful of time, is would it be okay if our attendees, if they wanted to, if they were to reach out to you via LinkedIn? Do it. All right, great. Do y'all have any final thoughts as our panelists before we end?
So I just shared a link in the chat, which goes to this little tips for graduating into a recession document that, like I mentioned earlier, is like kind of pulled from the experiences of, I don't know, a dozen or so people. Anyway, there's like more stories in there of people and like how they got their first jobs and different tips. And I tried to like distill it into, I think it's like 8 tips or something. I'm still working on it, so like it's a little bit of a draft right now, but you can go ahead and like take some stuff from it. But I'm going to try to like continue to chip away at this a little bit because I think it could be helpful for like other people beyond who's on this call. So I might share it more widely, but take a look at that. Yeah.
That's great, Olivia. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that you did that, because these are stories from people that graduated in 2009. So in a very similar circumstance to what our current seniors have. So that's really thoughtful. Thank you for that. And I just want to thank, Craig and Olivia and Connor for your time. If the 3 of you could hang on for just a second after everyone gets off, and I know that Colin knows this crew as well. So Colin, if you want to stay on, please feel free to do so. For all of you that have attended, thank you so much. We've had a good number of participants. It's going to make me look real good to my boss, so I appreciate that. But y'all have a good rest of the night, and I'll see you back on campus soon. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.